Good evening once again, everyone. I'm very thankful to have you all joining me once again. It's always a great, godly blessing to have you listening. But we left off last time with Jacob dying, and we pick up in verse 1 of Genesis 50, the very final chapter of Genesis. And before I get started, I'd just like to make a really quick note as to what has happened before this. For the first 17 years of Joseph's life, Jacob got to spend those with Joseph. Now we see the last 17 years of Jacob's life he gets to spend with Joseph again. Remember, he came into Egypt at 130 and he's dying now at 147. So he spent 17 years in this land with Joseph. It's a great godly blessing. But also, you must notice how whenever Jacob came into the land, the famine was 2 years in already. So another 5 years passed, and that would make 5 years that he spent in Egypt. But for the next 12 years, there was no famine. And he got to spend 12 good years in the land of Egypt. So it's not like it was all hardships and everything. Plus, his son ruled Egypt and got to see him. So this man is coming to a very good closing of his life. And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. Upon researching the first cultures to begin embalming the dead, I found this. The Chinchorro mummies are mummified remains of individuals from the South American Chinchorro culture found in what is now northern Chile. The oldest anthropogenically modified Chinchorro mummy dates from around 5050 BC. It's just really old. That's how old that they believe these are. But the ancient culture that developed embalming to the greatest extent was Egypt. As early as the first dynasty, 3200 BC, specialized priests were in charge of embalming and mummification. They did so by removing organs, ridding the body of moisture, and covering the body with natron. Natron is this ashy substance that they would completely engulf their bodies in, and it was used to draw out moisture. The ancient Egyptians believed that mummification enabled the soul to return to the preserved corpse after death. And 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 60 days. So for 70 days the entire nation of Egypt mourned for this Hebrew. And that shows the status and how much that they revered him. Because I think it's about only a little bit over that. That's right around the same amount of days that they mourned for their Pharaoh whenever he dies. 70 or 72. It's about 72, I think. And when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spake unto the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found grace in your eyes, speak, I pray you, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, Now he's speaking to one of Pharaoh's servants, is what he's doing. So he says, Speak in the ears of Pharaoh. Ask him this. My father made me swear, saying, Lo, I die, in my grave which I have digged for him in the land of Canaan. There shalt thou bury me. Now therefore let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury thy father according as he has made thee swear. It was remarked by many commentators how this is, in the entire Bible, this is the most luxurious and the most detailed funeral procession in the entire Bible. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. Wow. And all the house of Joseph and his brethren in his father's house, only their little ones and their flocks and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan, and there they mourned with a great and very sore lamentation, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. So they're all traveling this huge, huge caravan. Are traveling both Egyptians, mostly Egyptians, and the family of Jacob and Joseph. But they're traveling all this way, some 200 miles back around. There's a little bit of a dispute on the route that they took because it says that it's beyond the Jordan, so they don't know if they went through the Philistine land and then crossed Jordan or not. That's disputed. It's just a side question. But we read right before they bury Jacob, they stop at this threshing floor of Atad, which is probably just right outside of the tomb. It's very, very near the tomb. Now, these threshing floors were where they would take wheat, grain, and such, and they would, quite oftentimes, it'd be an ox, mules, you can use horses, whatever. It's a pretty arduous process, though, because they would put this lump of straw in the middle so that the animal, whatever it was, the beast could eat at certain points. But as you'll see right here, how they're this is showing about what they would do. A beast would often be dragging something right behind it, and then they would allow for it to take a little bit of a break and come on over and get something to eat. Take a little break. But this is what is mentioned in the New Testament about do not muzzle the ox, which is doing the work. That's pointing to ministers because it's Paul referring to the ministers. He says, don't muzzle the ox. Don't hold back monetary blessings or whatever kind of earthly blessings from the pastor who's doing the work of God for you. Try your best to keep them doing the work in comfort. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning in the floor of Atad, they said, this is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians, wherefore the name of it was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond Jordan. Abel Mizraim means the mourning of Egypt. So they seen for a whole week straight out on this threshing floor, probably a pretty good sized threshing floor. They seen for a week straight how they would mourn over Jacob. Now, this is right before they were going to put his body into the cave. They mourned. It's just kind of that thing of let people mourn in the beginning of a death. It is good to mourn. Don't hold that in because it'll always kind of settle within you. You must grieve. God gave us the ability to grieve whenever someone dies, someone that we love, even greatly love. It is very, very good to just let the person grieve. Don't dope them up, on anything if you don't have to. If they're hysterical, give them something, but and perhaps if it eases their pain, I don't see any problem with a little bit of medication, but a lot of people get reliant upon medication. It's good to grieve. It is. It's good to just let it flow. Let it flow even for days and weeks. Let it flow even for months. Let it flow because that's part of the healing process. That's probably the biggest part of the healing process. And his sons did unto him according as he commanded them. For his sons carried him into the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham bought with the field for a possession of a burying place of Ephron the Hittite before Mamre. That is the only spot in the entire portion of Canaan that actually belonged to the Hebrew people, and it was to bury Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives. And Joseph returned unto Egypt, he and his brethren, and all that went up with him to bury his father after he had buried his father. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. This is another one of the aspects of a guilty conscience. Even though they have been totally forgiven, both by God and by Joseph and by Jacob, even though they've all been totally forgiven, they can't forgive themselves. They still have that agonizing feeling that Joseph's going to do something to us now. We just know it. Now something bad's going to happen to us. See, this is the huge, huge reason in order to just stay away from evil altogether, because it will eat at you and eat at you and eat at you, because the flesh doesn't know how to deal with it. And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, Thy father did command before he died, saying, notice they're sending a messenger. They fear him so much that they don't even go themselves. They just send somebody. But they're saying that Jacob made a prom or made them say something. So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren and their sins, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. I would say that Joseph was weeping because of how little confidence that they had in his character, how they they couldn't tell before that he was very genuine, and how they seen his tears and how he's already told them, I have forgiven you, don't worry. And so he's crying because of their lack of faith, which is one of the reasons why Jesus wept. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we be thy servants. This is a humility that comes over them in order to back up what they're saying. They're saying, please don't harm us. This is how much that they believe he's really going to turn against them. I mean, my goodness, man, he's been there terrified. But they did a horribly evil thing to him. So they actually believe that they deserve this, but they're begging him for mercy. And Joseph's like, I have never once shown you all any hostility. And this is how much that they still fear him because of the wrong they did. This has nothing to do with what Joseph has ever done to them. This has everything to do with what they did. Once again, it's that evil that can just eat away at you. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. And this also points to the cross of Christ, how the Jews, meant it for evil against him, but God, it said it pleased the Lord to bruise him. And by doing such, he has saved much people, saved many, many people. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, the children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were brought up upon Joseph's knees. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Now remember this, he's given them a solemn promise. He says, just remember, God will bring you out of here. Very important. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. Now this is a prophecy, because we do learn later how they do bring his bones out. This also shows the certainty that Joseph had that God was going to bring them out. He says, you promised me now. He says, whenever you are relieved of this place, take my bones back into the promised land. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. This is the final verse of Genesis, but one final note on Genesis. Joseph was not buried. He was embalmed and placed in a sarcophagus, a coffin, Egyptian coffin. And it was on display, like right here, because Joseph was a very highly honored man. And for the next 400 plus years, the children of Israel could come up and look at Joseph and remember that oath. And they would say, Mommy, why is Joseph so important? And she would say, he's the one that brought us in here, and he also told us that we would be taken out of here. And we know that they're slaves at this time. So it almost seems like an impossible thing. But yeah, Joseph, he would never be buried in Egypt. He would just be preserved, and then they would take his bones. And that's what they would carry with them. It's not like they just went into a box and, carried a bunch of bones out and said it was Joseph. No, this was an untouched body of Joseph. And this is what they would have carried out with them whenever they're finally brought out of slavery. Anyway, thank you all, my friends, for hanging in there with me through Genesis. I do love you all, and I do so appreciate it. Lord willing, we will continue into Exodus, and no sense in stopping now. God, a peace be with you all. Amen.